Hey everybody, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today's video is about Nothing Projector's long throw ALR screen. Now, although this video is focused on one particular screen, it's worth pointing out that Nothing Projector has a huge variety of screen options on their website. So whether you're looking for a different screen size, different reflection properties, motorized, etc., Nothing probably has a screen for you. Now, before I get any further, Nothing Projector did send this screen out to me for review. I don't do any financial kickbacks with them. They didn't pay me to make this video, and they have no idea what I'm going to say about it. But I will have a purchase link in the description below, which will take you to the website to help you find what I'm talking about. The screen that I picked for this theater room is the 120-inch long throw ALR screen. Now, one particular characteristic of this screen is how thin the bezels are, which is really nice from a modern aesthetic. It looks really clean that way, and it takes up less space on the wall, but it's a little bit less forgiving with projector placement. One thing to consider is digital keystone correction. So if your projector is slightly off axis, it's going to have a somewhat distorted shape. Instead of a perfect rectangle, one side will be thinner than the other. So there are features in modern projectors called digital keystone correction, which will effectively shrink or expand one side over the other depending on your other settings. And by doing this, you can fix the fact that it's off axis to get a perfectly rectangular picture again. The difference is the part that was shrunk down is now going to have a black space above and below it. Basically, the projector itself is still illuminating the exact same pattern. What it's doing instead is digitally shrinking the image to fit inside the projector pattern itself. So if you have any kind of a spillover effect because of this, you're not fully getting rid of it. You have a black spillover. It's kind of like raised blacks, if you will. So what happens is if you have a thin bezel, it really doesn't hide any of that. It's very easy to see where, depending on how large your keystone correction is, a larger frame bezel around the screen, it might hide it a little better. If you have the ability to properly set up the projector and get it perfectly straight, which in a lot of cases, if you're using a long throw ALR screen like this, that's not going to be as much of an issue, so you can get away with a thinner bezel and still get the image perfectly projected inside the frame. Although Nothing Projector had no financial involvement with this video, we did have a sponsor, and these sponsors do make content like this possible because they help pay for all the stuff that we're not reviewing, whether that's the camera equipment or the other upgrades we make to a room like this, to make this content possible. So with that being said, I want to thank Final Audio. Final Audio just came out with a new wireless earbud called the Tonalite. At first glance, it looks like another premium wireless earbud, but this is Final's first product offering personalized timbre optimization. Microphones built inside the tip help with ANC and also with approximating your ear canal depth, which works in tandem of a full head scan and ear scan to create custom audio profiles. They also give you a 10-band EQ for further tweaking, and the entire product is covered in a textured finish, which looks and feels crazy premium. It's available now for a short launch window on Kickstarter prior to shipping, and I'll have links in the description below to check them out. So before we get into the actual performance of the screen, I want to talk about a couple things, and one is the assembly process, because these things are huge. It's a 120-inch screen, and they're not shipping to you pre-built. It's not like you get this insane box size, because that would be really cost prohibitive from a shipping and logistics standpoint. Instead, you get a much smaller tube and all of the stuff is inside, including the screen, which is rolled up. There are two huge things to focus on with a design like this. So one, this is a fixed frame. It's not motorized. I wanted something that was permanent and tensioned properly that gave me the exact same positioning that I wanted for my projector. Now, this uses an extruded aluminum frame. It's extremely lightweight, and it's really important to get this right. It has these locking channel pieces that go inside the metal to basically join each bar together to make this perfect 120-inch rectangle. And then you have the screen material itself. Now, the screen material is obviously large because fully open, it is going to cover a lot of floor space. So make sure you have the room to lay out a 120-inch screen on your floor. It does come with some protective stuff in the box, so maybe put that down first, put the screen on it, and then you carefully place the frame on top of that. It is paramount to center this frame as close to perfect as possible. So I always recommend having at least one other person to help you with this. The more square you get it, the less chance you're going to have of any kind of a wrinkle when you start tensioning the springs. And when I say tensioning the springs, there are a lot of springs. You basically have these small fiberglass rods that slip through the actual screen material itself This is basically the reinforcement and anchor point for the hook on the spring that grabs the projector screen material itself. Nothing Projector gives you 2 sets of white cotton gloves, which you and your partner will want to use, and then this little spring hook tool to help pull the springs over and tension it on the frame. There is a particular process to this because naturally when you're pulling a high tension spring on one side, it's going to want to pull the frame off center. So this is where it's really important to make sure the person is on the opposite side, applying enough pressure to make sure the screen material doesn't shift. Naturally, things can happen. It may not be perfect. So even if you hook on a couple springs, just keep an eye on the placement of the frame and adjust it before you really commit to the spring tension. Now, I hooked everything on the softer spring tension. Basically, the rail has 2 hook points. And if you do it on the lower one, if everything was done perfectly and you have no issues, there is a chance that's all you need to do. I kind of rushed some things, or, this was a learning process for me. I didn't have another reference video to base this off of. And when I put this up on the wall the first time, I had some wrinkles, particularly in the top right corner of the screen, which didn't help because a can light is on that side of the room, which further, exaggerates any of the deformities in the screen when you have lights right above it. Thankfully, the mounting system is very easy to get the screen on and off the wall because you basically have 2 spring-loaded tension hooks, if you will, for the bottom of the frame. And all you have to do is lift that up, and by doing so, it frees it off the hooks that it's resting on the top side. So you and a friend are going to want to grab both sides of the screen, preferably with the gloves on, lift it up, and then once you do that, you can basically hook it off. So we did all that, we put it back down on the ground, and we retensioned everything. And at first, I fixed it a little bit by just tightening up that corner, but it wasn't perfect. So at the end of the day, I ended up using the hook tool that it gave me. This was a very time-consuming process, and there's a lot of tension behind those little springs, so you want to be careful. But we retensioned all of them to the tightest setting. Once that was done, we basically knew that there was nothing left to do at this point, so we put it back on the wall. And it's, let's say, 99% perfect. I still have a little bit of a wave there, but it's not noticeable at all when the projector's on now, which was huge because before you could see it even when we were watching movies. Thankfully, that's finally gone because that would be a horrible distraction. I think the only way to properly fix this now is to actually release all of the hooks and start over and make sure that I have no odd tension where the frame or the actual screen material is slightly off before I start wrapping everything up. So we fixed all that. I already measured the brackets really well to make sure everything was perfectly level. We got the screen on, and then we could focus on the actual performance and setup of the projector itself. Now there's a lot more to consider than just screen size and price and brand. It's also the type of mounting system. Obviously there's fixed, there's vertical drop down, motorized, pushing up, and all these different things that change how it plays in your room. The screen material choice and the properties of the screen can drastically change your performance of not only your projector, but how the screen interacts with your room. ALRs, or ambient light rejection screens, are a special property of screen material. You can't get them to be acoustically transparent because of how the material works. And there are different types and different patterns of ALRs as well. There are 2 major designs for ALR screens. There's Fresnel and lenticular. Fresnel is kind of like a concave mirror type effect for how it rejects or kind of projects light back at you, but it can create hot spots in the center of the image. So this is using kind of like a lenticular technology, but the long throw version is actually different than the ultra short throw version. Ultra short throw, or UST, is what you find with ultra short throw projectors. It's the ideal pairing because the reflective properties of a UST based ALR screen is kind of like a saw blade. So picture these little tiny like window blades, if you will, or a 45-degree angle, let's just say, to keep it simple. The light that comes from the bottom is then reflected towards the viewer. This is really nice for extracting the maximum brightness of your ultra short throw projector, and by angling it this way, it's helping to reject ambient light above the screen. Again, it kind of counters and helps with contrast and brightness while not being affected by the brightness in your room as much. Nothing Projector uses a different angular pattern on their long throw ALR screens because typically when you have a long throw projector, most people mount them up high in the ceiling, kind of like what we did in this room. So an ALR screen that rejects vertical light is going to actually counter and make your projector perform worse. So it's really important to pair the right screens with what projector technology you're using. In this case, with the long throw ALR, not only is it not countering what your projector is doing vertically, but the ALR properties of this one is to reject horizontal light. So if you have a window on the side, a bright, a door opening to a brighter room, for example, this is going to help counter that. So it's better suited for a more purpose-built long throw projector home theater setup. In addition to all the light reflection properties, the mounting style, the screen size, pricing, the bezel, all of that, there's also something to consider, and that is the gain. Now, a negative gain, or I should say less than 1. 1 is a gain of 1 means that you're not modifying the light. What it gets, it's sending back at you. If you go to a 0.8 gain, which this particular screen is, you lose a little bit of peak brightness, but it can help with color saturation and contrast, giving you a better, deeper black picture. So it can help make things pop. If you have a more modern projector with a high amount of lumens and you have a controlled lighting environment, this can be a really nice pairing because it's going to help give you the contrast that you might be used to with higher quality, LED or OLED screens. Conversely, if you're still not getting enough light, then you might want to switch to a screen that has at least a gain of 1 or possibly higher, because that's going to help maximize the brightness that your projector is able to put out. If you go too bright, you might lose some of your contrast and color saturation because everything is kind of overly boosted. So again, it's all about pairing. This particular setup is using the Valerion Vision Master Pro 2. And I also have an XGME Horizon 20 Max I've been testing. Both of these are more than bright enough with this room, even with some ambient light in there. So when you look at the lumens of those, I think that's a safe sweet spot for most normal setups. There is one potential drawback with ALR screens, and that is something called laser speckle. Now, different projectors will have different things to counter that. The Valerion Vision Master Pro 2 in this case didn't really do enough to counter that potential issue. So in some cases, an acoustically transparent screen or a more standard cloth screen, even a standard white, could actually look better on it if you're sensitive to laser speckle. So what happens is it's most noticeable when I see like panning sky shots. If it's a cloudy day on the movie I'm watching and the camera's turning, you can kind of see a little bit of a reflective speckle throughout the sky. And I feel like once you see it, you can't really unsee it. Thankfully, my family didn't really notice, and we've watched a lot of movies on this setup, and I'm happy that they're happy, but it was starting to bother me. So when I tried the XGME Horizon 20 Max, that uses something called multi-axis LSR diffusion modules. And even if you look past the naming and the marketing and all of that, there's technology in there to help soften that speckle, but still give me a really bright, clear picture. And that effectively removed all laser speckles. So now I'm able to use the benefits of an ALR screen for a room that might have occasional ambient light, and I don't have the laser speckle that comes with it. I actually like having a slightly lesser gain because I like the richer contrast and color saturation. So if you want more of a screen appearance, like an actual TV screen appearance, and you have a bright enough projector to support that, and your room isn't crazy bright, I think you'll be happier with the end result of going with slightly lower gain. Otherwise, typically targeting a 1 gain is safe if you really don't know what's going to be better or worse. Now, one funny thing I want to share that I didn't think about because, I'm a specs person. I look for how this is built, how it's packaged, etc. And that is how the screen looks when it's off, which looks super high quality. When you have this graphite gray, oddly reflective screen material, it looks super premium. It doesn't just look like a projector screen cloth thing on your wall. And surprisingly, a lot of people that aren't into the movie stuff, like they like watching movies, but they don't know much about the projector screen material and all my electronics, they notice and think how cool the surface material looks of the screen. So I just wanted to share that. Everyone's like, I didn't even know they made them in gray. It's one of those things that if you're pairing it in the right room, in particular pairing it with dark walls, because that's such an important thing with projectors is to reduce, the spillover effect. You have a 120-inch bright screen and white walls, that's going to reflect some of that light back, and you can lose a little bit of the contrast. So keep the room treatment in mind as well. But it's definitely noticeable when it's off. It looks and feels a little bit more premium because of that. Now, to kind of summarize, I've been super happy with this screen's performance. I did a lot of research on what I thought would be best for this room, and I knew I could control the light enough because even if I couldn't control the light a ton, we usually watch our movies late at night anyway, after dinner time when it's already getting dark outside. So I knew I wouldn't have to compete with a ton of light. And going with a 0.8 gain really made the most of my projectors and bringing out that color saturation and contrast I would prefer to have even with such a large screen. The assembly process took a little bit to figure out, but it was relatively straightforward. And I think the most important thing is positioning the screen material well and getting those spring tensions just right. Triple check your waves and any potential, deformities in the screen before you hang it on the wall. And once you've done all that, it's kind of a set and forget screen design. So make sure you spec the right screen, not only the size and design, but the reflective properties for your room, the reflective properties for your particular projector setup. And once you've done the right homework and had the right pairing, you're going to have the more, magical setup you're hoping for. Thankfully, Nothing Projector sells a lot more screen options than just the one we're focused on today. So again, I will have a link in the description below to take you to the site. And hopefully now, after watching this, you have a little bit more information on what kind of things to shop for. Shoot a comment below if you have any questions. I'll do my best to answer them. And if you're building a theater of your own, I am super excited for you as well, because it is a very magical experience. Thank you so much for watching this. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care.